I think this is part 4 here. Continue here. So, was it ancient tide pool swirling or ancient thermal vent tumbling that added information to the building blocks to create something that would fight against inevitable death for a while? Which was it? Just to add to that, in a really simplified version, energy is involved with the bonding. Oh, so it is after all. Oh, so it is after all, okay. Yeah. It just doesn't need to be added to the atoms, as they already have the energy needed, and like Lego bricks. Oh, and the energy got into those atoms through which process? As to your question about what atoms were doing before they began reacting, the answer is they simply didn't exist as they do now. Then how did they exist before they do now? Before the Big Bang, we don't really know what there was. And you are an atheist and not an agnostic, because other than it's beyond human comprehension. If so, then you are an atheist. Why? Not to say we can't predict what there was correctly. What? We just can't imagine being there, as time didn't exist, and what caused time to then exist. And we can't fathom that. And you are an atheist and not agnostic, because the first atoms were created by the meeting and attraction between protons and electrons, which are very complicated. Oh, so it is complicated after all. They can be of a wave and particle depending on whether or not they are being interacted with. The electrons are excitations of the electromagnetic field, once again simplified, and protons are quarks that come from the condensed energy equals mc squared, again, and the energy that came about to form such a formula, you know. Do you know how DNA and RNA work? Isn't that like acting? Isn't that like asking? Oh, you know something? Okay. I'm gonna have to stop here. Well, I'll continue here, but you know something? This is something I've read before, and I don't want to read it again here. So I'm okay, now I think I found it here. Yeah, okay. This is where it begins here. Okay. Did you not do basic chemistry at the age of around 14? And if I did, I'd know that atoms came about not by God, but by what? Here in the UK, we learn about everything. By Jove. I just explained to you at that age. I just explained to you at that age. Oh, maybe he's 14. Oh, so you are 14 years old. Okay, well, that would explain certain things. You obviously don't have any grasp of simple chemistry, so how can you dismiss it? So he's 14, huh? Okay. Well, how was I dismissing simple chemistry by asking how simple chemistry created something complex enough to fight against the inevitable death for a while? And the bit about gravity makes no sense. Oh? And as the predetermined question you had, nothing was predetermined by God. If not God predestinating things, then what predetermined things? But by the basic laws of physics. Oh. Well, who knew that the basic laws of physics was so creative and thoughtful? You know? And the more complicated parts of chemistry and quantum physics, basically, if you are to put two chlorine atoms in a vacuum touching each other, then they will bond. Nothing else will happen. They will bond. Simple as that. And that disproves God predetermined things. Really? How so? Now, if you take the theory and add some more atoms, the same thing will happen. Only one thing will happen because of how atoms work. And now you can bring that theory into everything. Theory. Not fact, but theory. As everything is made up of those atoms, so the same series of events and particle interactions will happen every time you organize matter into the pattern, into that pattern. And that proves that God was not predetermining things, but basic laws of physics. And those basic laws of physics came about how? Okay, now this is called translocation of sugars. In science, a theory means something that is all but proved, right? Okay, every single time someone has tested the theory, it has been proven. If so, then why is it still called a theory? And no alternative has been thought up that has evidence towards it. What does that mean? In science, a theory means something that is all but proved, right? Okay, that is every single time someone has tested a theory, it has been proven. If so, then why is it still called a theory? And no alternative has been thought up that has evidence towards it. What does that mean? And for every other question, read a few GCSE level science textbooks and a few AS and A level ones as well, just to answer them. And that will prove that the laws of physics predetermine how a complicated object will arrive to fight against the inevitable for a while? You sure about that? But the laws of physics came about how? How do you discover that with the textbooks you with the textbooks you mentioned? Then you can rely on me and actually do some work on going against me. Asking questions is going against you, rather than simply saying, but how, and then me explain how, for you to only go, but how, because if you keep using that method, you start moving into quantum mechanics, and that's not really fully explainable to YouTube, in a YouTube comment. You can't explain it? I'm shocked. And that means that no other theory for the evidence we have has been thought of, or at least none, which fit the evidence as well. Evidence of, for example, nowadays the theory of translocation of sugars in plants happening in the phylum is widely believed. But 30 years ago, or so it was believed, it happened in the xylem through diffusion, not translocation. So scientists can be wrong. I mean, evolution is true. What? Most scientists accept the new theory because new evidence came up. Right. For example, the sea around the phylum companion cells is slightly acidic, indicating H positive ions being present, which H positive ions wouldn't be there unless they were pumped out of the companion cells. And the only possible explanation for why that was happening was that a process that created energy was occurring in the companion cells, indicating that the movements sugars in the phylum required energy, and so was not diffusion. But before this evidence, the diffusion theory was more commonly believed, and most people thought it a fact. Oh, I'm sure. But how does that have anything to do with the topic at hand? I better, yeah, okay.